20 years in this industry, I heard cash dying so many times. I'm not derogating that it's going, and it's natural that it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be really honest. It would be stupid to say no, it will prevail and is the best thing.
T for two. So I wanted to open the conversation with you on cash. Because cash and Croatia are good friends, really good friends. Like I've read on the internet, and it was a figure from Global Data that 64.5% of transactions in Croatia are still made in cash in 2022. So it's a huge number. And that's interesting because it's not the case somewhere else in European Union. If you think about Germany and Austria, but it's still a high rate. And it's even more interesting to talk about cash with you and about Croatia because of the recent introduction of euro. Like you guys, you arrived in 2023, if I'm not wrong, for January of 2023. No, for 2024, with a lot of problems, of course, and difficulties for consumers. And I guess it must have reactivated some debates around the existence of cash and, the existence of euro. So I wanted to know why Croatians are so in love with cash, according to you.
Yeah, well, I'll disagree with you because, when you look at the overall average throughout Europe, we mentioned Germany and Austria, which are really cash-prone countries, regardless of the perception somebody has. And I beg to differ on that because I believe the cards market here in Croatia is much more developed to some other countries compared to some other countries in the region. Mm-hmm. We are not, let's say, I agree in terms that cash is still, 2022, it's a tricky statistics because, we're talking COVID, post-COVID and pre-Euro, and you have to understand that a lot of cash went out on the market and prior to Euro exchange. I'm talking, big tickets, purchasing real estate and things like that for various reasons.
Yeah.
I think the numbers, we have reports from the National Bank coming out each June, July.
Yeah.
On the overall payment and then cards and cash statistics, and then we will see the numbers for 2024. I'm estimating we are buying 50-50, perhaps a little bit more in the favor of cash, which is, I would say, in line with the surrounding countries on the western part.
Yeah.
If you go eastern, Bulgaria, I think, is in the 30 plus ratio for the cash still. In our country, for example, one large part of that, the economy that's always favored cash. We are heavily touristically oriented country.
Yeah.
And for example, although car payment is ubiquitous and
compulsory because of tourism.
Yes, and every citizen in Croatia has a paying card. Yes, statistics shows that I think in average 2 cards per person, and technologically we are, if you look at the number of point of sale terminals, the ratio of number of point of sales compared to the ratio towards the number of people, we are
pretty high.
We are really high. I think we are top 5 or something. So the lack of infrastructure is definitely not the issue here. But for example, there are some small things, coffee shops, like bars and coffee shops. Okay, if you go downtown, touristy places, you will be able to pay with card. But most of the coffee shops work only with cash. They don't look at cash, they don't look at the big picture. We know today that cash is actually more expensive if you look at the overall big picture than compared to card payments, to digital payments. But for them, it doesn't play a significant role. Still it's cash, it's something that's tangible, it's something that they can use as a revolving asset immediately, which is an important factor because, they can pay vendors, they will pay for coffee, he will take that money and pay his vendor for milk or for whatever. I'm oversimplifying, but just for the sake of the argument. And yes, the small tickets, if you talk about car payments, that plays a role. So not only the parcel transaction, but many acquirers. This is slowly changing. The TM transaction rule players onto the market, which they need to file the fees with numbers. But many acquirers for many years did like a penalty fees. If you don't have enough volume, then you have to pay for the device. Yeah, it's a 20, 30, 50 euro, doesn't matter. But look, somebody who has a daily turnover of, I don't know, 1,000 euros, 50 euros,
It's a penalty.
it's penalty for them, and they cannot commit because traditionally, I mean, I'm taking my coins out and I'm paying for the drink and I'm not taking out my card. So it will take time to transition from, being cash payment in these kind of establishments to card payments.
And do you think there is like a sort of also historical reasons or linked to the past and into the fact that Croatia was part of Yugoslavia and the development of electronic payment? I mean, in Yugoslavia, didn't have electronic payment; it didn't exist formally.
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, we had cards. I mean, actually, we had. I think the American Express was the first card.
Okay.
That led to this specific issue of installments in Croatia that you know about. But yeah, it was a cash, prone country area all over with inflation very often just reducing the value of the money.
Yes, and you also have the hyperinflation consecutively to the collapse of Yugoslavia. That also, how can you develop a stable payment infrastructure when your macroeconomic is not stable?
And still you have, I mean, we are talking about we are not transitional country anymore.
No, it's finished.
It's residual. I mean, those people are still here, and we still have, and then we have a vast ATM network. Although this is declining also, we need to, establish the fact that cars are rising, cash is not declining in this country. So the trend is in favor of car. And you still have people who use the ATM because it's legal obligation. You have to pay on the account. Everybody has to account. They go to the ATM, they withdraw all the cash app, and then they use in some areas. It's different based on the area, based on the age.
Yeah.
The young people, I have 100 kids. I have 19, I have 14, and I have 2.
Yeah.
So the latter one, God knows what she will. She will not use cash. Pardon me, she will use card, because those two, they rather use Apple Pay than card.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't have the explanation, to be honest. I mean, I'm in the business and everything. It's like, I have it here and I'll use it on the phone. But he's familiar with, doing the digital payments. But still, he has a bakery next to his school that doesn't have card acceptance. So he has to pay it with cash on the cards. Yeah. And, as the time goes by, these guys and girls who are paying with the cards will prevail definitely. And this will go up. But look, we saw the scenarios in some other countries. You saw the Sweden, which is really, card. And at one point, they had to reverse a bit,
and they had to, because there were no cash.
I mean, still, it's let's be honest, it's a legal tender. It's there. It works. It doesn't need battery. It doesn't need infrastructure. It needs, hands exchanging the legal tender for payment. Do I see it dying in the near future? No. And it depends also on the geopolitical situation, because, first guy, when infrastructure does a kick up, everybody say, okay, how about I have,
some cash per
cash with me? Cash is invisible still today. I mean, in some parts, of course, you cannot.
I agree. It's like it's really difficult, because this is something I'm always amazed in the statistics, especially even this 64.5% from the above data, is how did they find it? Because paying by cash is invisible.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to formally says, okay, it's 60.5% of all transactions. Because yes, you have a trace of digital payments because it's easy, you can trace them. But how do you trace cash?
Yeah. Okay. So I can give you that information. That actually is easy because we got, at least for if you talk about Croatia, talking about the overall other countries, we have very advanced fiscalization system where we introduced. I cannot remember 7-8 years ago, perhaps more than all before it. We introduced online fiscalization system.
And you see, this is where it's getting interesting because actually, because you have a constraints, so you must evaluate the numbers of transactions you're doing by cash. You're getting creative and you find some ways to trace it. Yeah, I know. Because this is something that is not always obvious, and you cannot always find the figures on, if you go to some website of different central banks, it's not always easy. And the ECB also is not really don't have a lot of statistics on cash circulation.
Yes.
Because it's difficult. And you see, with the constraint of the fact that people use about the cash, we can finally find some workaround solution to estimate approximately, of course, there will always be some informal economy, but
yeah.
And cash still can exist, So this is also why I was asking you this question about, cash being obsolete and expensive. Obviously, you can find some workaround solution. I also read that in Croatia, you even have some logistic centers that belongs to the state, the FINA, right? And those
Financial agency. Yeah.
that those guys can distribute cash. It's a state initiative, so it belongs to the state, and not to Brink's, not to Loomis. It's here, it's official, it's the state. And I think it was interesting to mention it because it changed a bit the narrative around cash. Like, we can make something with cash without, saying that it's expensive or it's obsolete. It's just another way of using it.
I told you, in 20 years in this industry, I heard cash dying so many times. I'm not delegating that it's going, and it's natural that it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be really honest. It would be stupid to say no, it will prevail and is the best thing. But I don't see it dying in such a pace that is going to disappear in the next 10, 15, 20 years, unless something dramatically changes because the people are against. And I'm talking about Croatia. I'm talking all over Europe.
Cannot always say that cash is going to disappear.
Be inspired by China,
Right.
with things they did. If you're talking about payments, WeChat, now pay, and fake CDs, but you cannot replicate.
No.
Because we are, China is one country with, they say everybody must allow for Face ID to be used. That everybody will use recently if